What does Putinism want? Its goal is to turn back the clock, to bring back some glorious, imperial past that exists in their minds. But that's against God's will, because God gave us time. This is the devilish rebellion against God's will. It's a distortion of faith. And through this whole poisonous anti-human ideology, they're trying to instill in us the idea of obedience that wants to turn everyone into people without freedom. He publicly preaches heresy. We must protect ourselves from being complicit in this heresy. It is already deadly.
Greetings to everyone. You are watching Freedom. My name is Sakin Imbersov. This is our project, People of Goodwill. And today we are in an unusual place, in an unusual country, in an unexpected country. We are recording this program not in Ukraine, but in Rome, Italy. And our guest is Sister Vassa Larina.
Sister Vassa Larina is a nun of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, Doctor of Theology, liturgist, and professor at the Kiev Orthodox Theological Academy. She was born in 1970 in New York, in the family of a priest, a Russian emigre. After finishing school, she studied at a college with a focus on the humanities. She studied theology at the Institute of Orthodox Theology at the University of Munich. She is widely known thanks to her YouTube program on religious topics. After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, she released a series of videos called Orthodox Against the War, and criticized the statements and actions of representatives of the Moscow Patriarchate and the Russian Orthodox Church abroad. In May 2025, the Synod of the Russian Orthodox Church abroad stripped Sister Vassa of her monastic status for so-called disobedience.
Hello, Sister Vassa. I'm glad to see you.
Hello, Sakin. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it just so happened that we met here in Rome. What can you say about the new Pope? He's a U.S. citizen, just like you. Do you have any special feelings about that?
He seems so humble to me. He has such a charm that, as a person, if you don't get into his stated opinions, everyone started wondering, who is this guy? When he came out on the balcony, honestly, everyone was surprised. Where is he from? He's not only a U.S. citizen, but also from Peru. So the first thing I'll say is that he makes a good impression. That's it. And if you look at everything he's ever said and what he's saying now, overall, I personally have a pretty positive impression of him. I'm glad that, in my opinion, he seems to support Ukraine more clearly and unambiguously in this whole ongoing tragedy, as well as throughout the entire story and development of the war, which has affected so many lives and continues to be a major concern for the world. He has already met with President Zelensky, which is encouraging, and he himself makes a good impression based on his biography. He studied mathematics, yes, and even physics, as well as canon or church law, which in the Catholic Church, that is, the Roman Catholic Church, unlike the Orthodox Church, is considered a more precise, rigorous discipline. So I think his mind is organized in a much more orderly and systematic way, and as a result, he might be even more cautious and deliberate in his statements, which, on the one hand, can sometimes be a bit unpleasant or uncomfortable, especially when someone is being overly cautious or careful in what they say. But when it comes to Pope Francis, who is also in his own way very kind, extremely charismatic, and genuinely charming, I actually had the chance to talk with him a little bit just once during a brief encounter. But sometimes, I think, of course, not intentionally, but he would perhaps inadvertently step on some toes. There were various statements and comments about me that were, at times, quite hard to hear. The new Pope Leo, as you may know, he has experienced not only in America, but also in other parts of the world, and he has a very well-developed sense of service, the idea that it's truly important to serve and help the poor. Well, that's the Augustinian order. He kind of emphasizes both this social service and scientific activity, which is also interesting. This combination is fascinating.
Do you think that dialogue with Orthodoxy will continue?
I don't really believe in dialogue at the very highest level between the churches because for many years now it hasn't really led to anything significant or concrete. But I fully support the idea that at the parish level and among ordinary people, we really shouldn't constantly preach from the Orthodox side and have this kind of attitude of self-isolation within the Orthodox Church. That is, we shouldn't close ourselves off. This tendency appeared under Patriarch Kirill, unfortunately, which wasn't typical of the Russian Orthodox Church before, this self-isolation and anti-Western rhetoric. So this era began under the leadership of Patriarch Kirill with this ideology of the Russian world. And then there's this idea that the West has fallen into Satanism and all that stuff. When so-called ordinary people constantly hear this kind of rhetoric and are taught that there's nothing we can learn from Catholics, although there is also a tradition that, for well-known historical reasons, certain fields of science, at least some of them, flourished more in the West than in the East, and these are relevant to the Church as well.
And it turns out that you were just recently in Kiev. What were you doing in Kiev? How did you like Kiev overall? And what about Ukraine?
I was really surprised that despite the war, Kiev is still standing. That thought kept running through my mind, Kiev is standing. And I felt like I learned a lot of lessons from that. I just feel that at this moment in time, there's so much that we really need to learn now from how the Ukrainian people are standing strong and resilient. And even the Church, which is divided in many ways, is still very much alive. There is life there, after all, and even our divisions are, in a way, a sign of life. That's normal. People who truly have the moral strength and inner fortitude for this, and who willingly accept this significant challenge with certain deep spiritual and emotional resources, whether those are instilled in them from an early age or awakened later in life, yes, they also show their very best side. And overall, it seems to me that, at least from my perspective, you can see that as a people, the Ukrainian people, as a whole, there are temptations to split up, to fall apart, to give up. There are some forces that might want that to happen, but what feels stronger is this: no, we won't give up. And that kind of really straightens people out in a way. You know, it helps them get back on track in a sense. And that really surprised me. One woman I happened to meet, she was an Uber driver, told me that everything was fine for her. When I asked how she was doing, what it was like to live in Kiev during the war, she said she had decided she wasn't going to complain. She has a little girl, but she lost her boyfriend in the first year of the war. He died, he was killed at the front. She put it this way: if I just sit around complaining, no one else is going to live my life for me. I'll just waste my life. I visited Bucha, of course, to pay my deepest respects there, honoring the memory of those who have suffered. So along with the monuments that stand as solemn reminders of sacrifice, I also visited the cemetery and saw so many graves of your fallen heroes, each one a testament to courage and loss. As I walked among them, I saw that this wounded Ukraine, the Ukraine that is bravely fighting and enduring so much pain and suffering, is still standing strong, and it affirms life. Most of the gospel is about this, about overcoming death through communion and unity with Christ. He is the one who conquered death by death, but he rose again and bore his wounds. Christ is both wounded and resurrected, and he invites us to partake in this. So the injustice that seemed to have triumphed when he was crucified and killed on the cross is not forgotten, even to this very day, because his wounds still bear witness to that crime on the one hand. But on the other hand, even as the risen Lord, he continues to share this woundedness with us. He knows about it, but he doesn't always fully and completely restore justice at the pace or in the exact way that we might expect. Personally, I went through a period when I was genuinely and deeply troubled by the question of this unpunished, seemingly triumphant injustice. Anyone who knows a bit of history knows that far from all, even most Nazis after World War II were not punished. Justice was not restored there. Someone who doesn't see things the way you do. Ukraine sees its present and future, and its past as well, differently than that neighbor who wants to rewrite both the past and the present, and who sees no future. That's what Putinism wants. Why is this so godless, and why is it a form of fighting against God? Because those who say it are right, his real goal is to turn back the clock, to bring back some glorious imperial past that exists only in his mind. But that goes against God's will, because God gave us time. Time moves forward. Sooner or later, these processes will continue. But this is a devilish rebellion against God's will. No, I want what isn't mine.
Yes, time.
It's gone. You can't fight against history.
The flow of time, right? But how did you physically experience the war? Did you hear the alarms? Did you maybe hear bombs?
Yes.
Tell us about that part, because after all, you're someone from America, you've lived for many years in Europe, and there hasn't been war in those places, not in America for a very long time, and not in Europe either. And then you find yourself, you're transported into this world. You speak so beautifully from a theological perspective, but this world is constantly under threat, constantly. And this woman, she doesn't complain, but she can't help thinking that she could die at any moment.
I felt that a little bit. I know it might sound a bit dramatic to say this, but that's honestly how I truly felt at the time. In fact, it actually affirmed and reinforced a sense of life and vitality in me as well, because as we all know, people can sometimes fall into depression or feel completely paralyzed by their emotions for reasons that are much less dramatic or significant than what I experienced, you know?
People have panic attacks.
Yes. I can't imagine what it's like to constantly live under those sirens and explosions. But yeah, on my very first night, suddenly Elena, who was hosting me there, woke me up. I was completely out of it because I've been traveling for so long and I was sleeping really deeply. I told her, I'll know it. Let me sleep a little longer. That's what I told her. She said. She dragged me into the hallway. And I managed to hear the sirens. I heard them, and I heard 2 explosions. I heard those explosions. After that, I heard sirens in the following days, but I didn't hear any more explosions because those first ones were very close to us. It's a pretty central area. And of course I was scared. She said, "It's okay, the first time is scary."
But you get used to it.
And usually no one goes anywhere. You have to check the app to find out where it's coming from and what it is. If it's a ballistic missile, as they explained to me, then you really should go somewhere safe.
Your visit caused such a stir, largely because you are now Ukrainian in the Orthodox sense of the word.
But I'm not Ukrainian.
I mean, you switched. Let me clarify for the viewers. Sister, as we call it in our church, changed jurisdiction, right? That is, if that's the correct way to put it.
That's more of a political concept. Although I don't believe that the church is outside of politics, that's just a myth. But people immediately want to put you into some category, like now you're on this side. It's like a political party. I've been outside the monastery for many, many years, but when the war started, I knew I had to raise my voice and speak out publicly and clearly against it, especially against those so-called church voices that supported it. I recently published something on the topic of why Patriarch Kirill's statements regarding what many people like to refer to as the so-called Russian world, and the reasons why you can actually call that a heresy, are important to discuss. In this work, I explore the background and implications of his words. He publicly preaches heresy. This created a problem for the Synod of the Russian Orthodox Church abroad, because I'm saying that Patriarch Kirill's teachings, that he publicly preaches heresy, should have certain consequences, or at least should have them according to the canonical law of our Orthodox Church, but we don't see any consequences for him. Nor do we see any other patriarchs or bishops breaking off relations with him.
Communication, relationship.
But this needs to be done because we must protect ourselves from participating in this heresy. In other words, it's already deadly. It's actually shedding blood in a very obvious way because heresy is dangerous not just because some ideas are being violated,
It's a specific evil, a concrete action.
It's being put into practice. This is an anti-human teaching. It's not for people or for their salvation. The World Russian People's Council specifically. It's presided over by none other than the Patriarch himself, Kirill, yes. What kind of council is this? And it issues a decree using this kind of archaic pseudo-church word, a decree where there's not a single word about God. The triune people, the highest meaning of life is supposedly something about Russians, I don't know, culture, holy sites.
Well, those are elements of heresy after all.
Yes. What is this anyway if this council? Turns out all sorts of people are part of it. Shoigu is on this council, Nikita Mikhalkov, and all kinds of characters like that. And bishops too. And the patriarch is the chairman. And they issue a manifesto that honestly reads like some kind of fascist text. Well, there's all sorts of stuff in there, but the scariest thing to me was this itself. And of course, the idea of a holy war. And that Ukraine absolutely must come under the complete influence of Russia. I was surprised, and I felt a sense of betrayal and abandonment by the hierarchs when the only response from the bishops abroad was just simply silence. I didn't hear a single word of condemnation, not even an analysis of this document, which the Patriarch supported and fully endorsed. The very Patriarch we're supposed to commemorate as great. Well, how can you even bring yourself to say that when he's justifying all of this ideology while there are real people involved? This isn't some soccer match we're watching, right? Which side is going to win?
So, in the end, is that what led you to this decision to join?
No. What led me, I still thought it was necessary to speak about this from within, from inside our church. In fact, they tried to silence me. At first, they pressured me. The bishop summoned me without making any public announcements about it. They wrote to me several times. There were reprimands. They summoned me. Then the Metropolitan wrote me a letter expressing his dissatisfaction, asking what I said there. And then he summoned me, but in the end he refused to see me. They never supported the mission of Coffee with Sister Vassa. And 99% of it is about the church calendar, about the Holy Scripture. You could just lose your mind if you don't have faith, if you don't understand that there is someone who is justice itself. And there is truth, and there is crucified truth. So all of this has happened before. It's not the first time that evil has triumphed, right? And it's not the first time that people have shed blood to try to stop it. But it's important to understand why it makes sense to support this struggle, why it makes sense not to stay silent. We know there was fascism, and it seemed to have been defeated in World War II. Now this disease has flared up again, and very quickly at that. This upright person who doesn't bend like Ukraine doesn't bend even though they want to completely trample and destroy her. Orthodox Christians are not automatically upright. Orthodoxy is a calling. This is about church consciousness and what the church is, the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. It's not automatically like that. You were baptized now. You're Orthodox, you're united, you're holy, you're an apostle. But we also straighten up gradually. We should strive for this, not bend, not like what's happening with us now. They're trying through Putinism, which is some kind of unnatural alliance or marriage between Putinism and Orthodoxy, as if this is a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation of the word orthodoxy. But this appearance exists. It's just a heretical distortion.
Yes.
It's a distortion of faith. Through this whole poisonous ideology and anti-human and human ideology, they're trying to instill in us the concept of obedience, which wants to turn everyone into people without freedom, who, no matter what the authorities say, supposedly on the basis of,
You have to obey.
yes, and they refer, as Metropolitan Sergius Stragorodsky already in his notorious declaration, he referred to the beginning of the 13th chapter of the Epistle to the Romans. So, at the beginning of the 13th chapter of the Epistle to the Romans, the Apostle Paul writes about a good ruler, that he does not bear the sword in vain. Here, interestingly, this is important for those who are fighting on the front lines, specifically defending their own country. I'm not talking about the aggressors, but secondly, there it says that you must obey the authorities. But the whole text is about a ruler and authority that is a terror to evil deeds, not to good ones. So there's a clear understanding there that it's talking about an authority that prosecutes evil deeds, punishes evil deeds, and not good ones. Exactly. But when everything is turned upside down and you see that the authorities abuse their power, then it's no longer about you having to obey. After all, let's remember that the Apostle Paul himself was beheaded by the authorities for what he said. It's important to talk about these topics because it's not like they don't concern us. These issues lead to a lot of bloodshed, and that's why it's uncomfortable to talk about them. But we have to. We have to talk about this.
And thank you for doing this. Sister, this is the big deal. I'm very grateful to you for finding the time during your trip to Rome. Thank you so much. Sister, all the best and see you soon.
See you soon.
That was Sister Vassa. As always, we talked with her about church life, about spirituality, and of course about politics as well, since that's another area of our lives that has a big impact on us. Leave your comments under this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Freedom Channel's social media accounts. I'll say goodbye for now. See you in exactly 1 week. Take care of each other and take care of Ukraine.